The poor fear debt. The middle class drown in it. And the rich quietly use it to get richer. Same tool. 3 completely different outcomes. And the difference is not luck. It is understanding. You were taught that all debt is dangerous, that owing money is always a trap to escape. That advice keeps you safe, but it also keeps you exactly where you are. There is another way. Today I am going to show you how the wealthy actually think about borrowed money. And I promise you, by the end, you will never look at debt the same way again. Now a clear warning before we begin, because this knowledge is powerful and double-edged. Used wisely, debt builds empires. Used carelessly, it destroys lives. Respect it like fire. Stay to the end, because the final strategy is how the ultra-wealthy borrow and barely pay tax. Let's start with the single distinction that changes everything. There is not one kind of debt. There are 2, and they are complete opposites. There is bad debt, and there is good debt. Confusing them is the most expensive mistake in money. Bad debt is money you borrow to buy things that lose value and put nothing back in your pocket. The credit card balance for clothes. The loan for a depreciating car. The financed vacation. This debt takes money out of your pocket every month and gives you nothing in return but stress. And it often charges brutal interest, over 20% on cards, by the Federal Reserve's own data. Bad debt is compound interest aimed like a weapon directly at you. Run from it. Kill it first. But good debt is a completely different animal, and this is where the rich quietly live. Good debt is money you borrow to buy an asset, something that earns or grows in value. It puts more money in your pocket than it costs you. It pays for itself, and then some. A mortgage on a rental whose tenant covers the payments. A loan to grow a profitable business. Here, the debt is not a chain around your neck. It is a lever, lifting far more than you could alone. And that word, lever, is the entire secret. The rich think in leverage, while others think in saving. Let me show you the math, because once you see it, you cannot unsee its power. Imagine you have $100,000, and you find investments returning 10% a year. With only your own cash, you earn $10,000. Solid, respectable, but limited. Now imagine you borrow another $100,000 at, say, 6% interest, and invest it too. You now control $200,000. At 10%, that earns you $20,000. You pay $6,000 in interest on the loan, and you keep the difference. $14,000. So your own $100,000 just earned $14,000 instead of $10,000. That gap is leverage. You captured the spread, the difference between what the asset earns and what the debt costs. As long as your asset out-earns your interest, borrowed money quietly multiplies your wealth. This is the engine. It is exactly how banks, businesses, and property empires are all built. They borrow at a low cost, invest at a higher return, and pocket the difference at massive scale. Now there is a second, hidden gift inside good debt that almost nobody talks about. Inflation. When you borrow a fixed amount, that number never changes. You owe the same dollars for years. But inflation quietly shrinks the real value of money, year after year, in the background. So you repay tomorrow's debt with dollars that are worth less than the ones you borrowed. Inflation eats away at your fixed debt while you sleep. Time itself is quietly paying it down. That is why the wealthy love long-term, fixed, low-interest debt against assets that rise with inflation. The asset floats up with rising prices, while the debt stays frozen and silently shrinks. Heads, they win on the asset. Tails, inflation wins on the debt. The game is quietly rigged for them. And there is one more reason debt is so beloved at the top. In many places, it can be tax-friendly. Borrowed money is not income, so it is generally not taxed the way a salary is. And the interest on good debt, used for investing or business, is often deductible too. So the rich can access huge amounts of money while paying surprisingly little tax on it. Which brings us to the final strategy, the one that sounds almost too clever to be legal. It is quietly known by 3 blunt words: buy, borrow, die. Here is how it works, and why the truly wealthy almost never sell their best assets. Step 1. Buy. They acquire assets that grow over time. Stocks, businesses, and real estate. Step 2. Borrow. Instead of selling those assets, which would trigger tax, they borrow against them. A bank happily lends against a large portfolio, at low rates, because the assets are strong collateral. They get cash to live on and to reinvest, all without selling, and often without a big tax bill. Their assets keep growing in the background, while they spend the borrowed money tax efficiently. Step 3, the blunt one. Die. The assets pass to heirs, often with the tax clock reset. It is a legal strategy the ultra-wealthy use, and now at least you understand how the game is played. You may never run it yourself, but seeing it changes how you understand wealth forever. Now, I promised honesty, so let me be very clear, because leverage cuts both ways. The exact same force that multiplies your gains will just as ruthlessly multiply your losses. If your asset falls in value, or stops earning, you still owe every penny of that debt. Borrow to invest badly, and leverage does not build an empire. It digs your grave faster. This is why good debt demands strict rules, the same ones the calm and wealthy always follow. Rule 1. Only borrow to buy assets that produce income or reliably grow. Never for liabilities. Rule 2. The spread must be safe. The asset's return needs real room above the interest cost. Rule 3. Keep a buffer. Never borrow so much that one bad month can wipe you out. Rule 4. Prefer fixed, long-term, low-interest debt, so a rate spike cannot suddenly crush you. Follow those rules, and debt becomes a careful tool. Break them, and it becomes a loaded trap. Now you might be thinking, this is all fine for the rich, but how does a normal person start? The truth is, you may already hold the most powerful piece of good debt ever created. A mortgage on a home is, for most people, their very first real taste of healthy leverage. You control a large, appreciating asset with a small deposit, while inflation shrinks the loan. Turn that home into a source of income by renting a room, and the debt starts paying itself. Your next step might be a small rental property, where the tenant's rent covers the mortgage. Or a careful loan to start or grow a business that earns far more than the interest costs. The principle is always the same. Borrow only to buy something that pays you back, with margin to spare. But let me show you the dark side too, because ignoring it has destroyed millions of people. In 2008, the world watched what happens when ordinary people take on debt they cannot handle. Buyers borrowed far beyond their means, betting that house prices could only ever rise. When prices fell, the leverage that promised them riches instead wiped them out completely. They owed more than they owned, and the same lever that lifts so high crushed them on the way down. That is the eternal warning. Leverage does not forgive carelessness, ever. It only amplifies it. So how do you stay on the safe side of this powerful line? You watch one simple number. It is your debt compared to your income, and to the value of what you actually own. Keep that ratio conservative, so that even a bad year cannot tip you over the edge. Always be able to cover your payments even if the income from the asset paused for months. The rich are not reckless gamblers with debt. They are often more cautious than anyone else. They use leverage like a surgeon uses a blade. Precisely, deliberately, and with deep respect. And crucially, they never borrow to impress people. They borrow only to acquire and to build. The financed sports car to look rich is bad debt. The loan for the business is good debt. One borrows against your future to buy applause. The other borrows to buy your freedom. So let's bring this all together, because it rewrites a belief you have held your whole life. Debt itself is not good or evil. It is a tool, and the hand that wields it decides everything. Bad debt buys liabilities that drain you. Run from it and pay it off as fast as you possibly can. Good debt buys assets that pay you. Used with discipline, it is the fastest lever to real wealth. The rich borrow to invest, let inflation shrink the debt, and rarely sell their best assets. They do not avoid debt out of fear. They master it with rules, patience, and cold arithmetic. You do not need to fear debt anymore. You need to understand it, and respect it like fire. Master that single idea, and you have learned one of the true secrets of how wealth is built. Tell me in the comments. Did this change how you see debt? Be honest, yes or no. And subscribe, because next we break down the exact assets worth borrowing to own.